It had been the first hot day. Even the sun felt tired. That may sound very strange, to think of the sun feeling tired, said Daddy. But still, can't you imagine that on the first hot day that comes, when the sun has been shining with all his might and main, he gets a little bit tired and is glad when it is time to go to bed? Many strong people may get tired at night. As the sun went to bed, the moon began to peep up and laugh. He grinned from ear to ear, for he said to himself, "Tonight I really will be appreciated, for the sun has overworked today and no one ever gets any thanks for overworking. It is as bad as not working enough." Illustration. The Fairy Queen was dressed in glittering gold. Page 155 Of course, the moon was the very sort to talk that way. For, can you imagine that jolly old man whom you see grinning at you so often as ever really working very hard? Just then the moon began sending out his invitations for a party. He sent them in this way. He whispered to the tall pines that he wanted to have a party and to invite all the little fairies. Also he added that they must wear their very best clothes, for when he gave a party he liked to see folks in their party clothes. The Fairy Queen was dressed in glittering gold. She wore a gold crown on her head and carried a gold wand with gold stars glittering from it. All the other fairies were dressed in silvery costumes, for the man in the moon is very fond of silver. You will sometimes notice that he puts on a silver robe himself, and he is very friendly with the silver clouds that float in the sky at night. They did have the very best time, and they all enjoyed the party so much. The man in the moon laughed his head off, at least the fairies were afraid he would, as he said he had never before seen the pine trees behave so like silly little trees, instead of like big, dignified trees they had always prided themselves on being. But the pine trees didn't care, for they were having a beautiful time waving and singing. They sang for lots of the lovely dances the fairies did. As for the fairies, they felt it was a very great honor for them to be given a party by the wonderful old man in the moon, who had such splendid guests as the pine trees. Billy was very, very fat, and, oh, so lazy. The reason he was so fat was because he ate everything he wanted. He used to spend every penny he ever got all on himself, and he always bought candy. When supper time came he really made himself very sick over jam, for he always persisted in eating loads and loads of jam and would not even spread it on his toast, but would eat it plain out of a spoon. One afternoon he went to a party. He was very disagreeable and wouldn't play any games at all. He simply sat in a corner and waited until supper time came. Then he ate all the ice cream, all the candy and all the cake that he could get hold of. None of the other children went near him, for they didn't care about a little boy who only cared about eating all the time. That night Billy felt very sick when he went to bed. But he soon fell asleep. In his sleep, though, a great horned dragon appeared and said to him, "Billy, it's for your sake I'm coming here tonight. We dragons aren't nearly so dreadful as we're made out to be. We take a great interest in children, and I am going to take a great interest in you. Before you made such a little, yes, I must say it, a little piggy wig of yourself you were a very nice little boy. But now you're fat and lazy. So every night I shall chase you around in your dreams until you give up eating so much jam and candy and until you once more enjoy playing around with the other little boys and girls." "Oh, please don't," said Billy, who was terrified. "Yes," said the dragon. "I'm a good friend of yours, and I shall make you a real boy again. In a few weeks you really won't know yourself." With that he was gone, but he kept his word, and every night chased Billy around in his dreams until he gave up eating so many sweets and played games and became a real boy again. "I am sure," said Daddy, "that the scarlet flowers known as the balsam flowers love the very coziness of a fireplace. For they always thrive better in a room where there is an open fire than they do with Mr. Sun's rays shining down upon them, and perhaps they can read stories in the fireplace. Perhaps they can see fairy tales being acted in the blue and red and orange flames. Anyway, they love the open fires, and so I think we ought to call them the cozy balsam flowers." "There was once," said Daddy, "a boy whose name was Worthington, and for short they called him Worthy. He had a sister whom he called Mimi, and it is a story of these two I want to tell you this evening." Jack and Evelyn looked very much pleased. They loved to hear about other children, especially of boys and girls about their own ages. Worthington was unlike some brothers, but he was like you in this way, Jack. He liked to play with his sister. His sister liked, too, to play with him. He never frightened her, but he showed her how to do things, and she was never afraid when she was with him. In the fall he took her for rides in her express cart, and he made a high seat in the cart for her when he took her for slower and more stylish rides. He taught her to climb trees and to swim and to do tricks on the trapeze. And she, too, used to play in the snowball fights, back in the forts which he and the other boys would make. Well, it was summer, and Worthington was not going to school. He thought and he thought and he thought, and finally he said, "I wonder if it couldn't be done. I will try anyway." He worked out the whole scheme in his head, and the next day he went to his aunt who owned a garden, and he said, "Auntie, I have been thinking about something. This summer," he began, "I could hoe the beans in your garden, and I could weed the garden paths. I could water the flowers every night, and do all the weeding. In fact, you wouldn't need to have a man do the work, except one day a week to do the heavy things. And then I thought I could give Mimi a present of skates and boots out of my own money in the fall." And Auntie engaged him as an assistant gardener then and there. "Some children," said Daddy, "were playing. Let's pretend we're awfully rich," said two of the children. "We shall have motor cars and we shall have airplanes to fly in. We shall have quantities of people to give orders to. We'll never have to tidy our rooms, and we'll never have to run errands." So they began to play. Three other children said, "Let's be very famous. We shall have all the people in the world swarm around us as the bees do around the flowers for the honey. They shall say how fine we are, how brave we are, and how noble. They'll put up monuments to us." And still three other children wanted to play. "We want to play that we have a few animals. They are such fun, more fun than anything, and if we treat them right we'll be loved so much. Yes, we shall play we have 2 dogs and a little pony." Now the Dream King was sitting on a throne made of silver threads so beautifully woven that they held together and gave him the most wonderful of thrones. Over his head were little boys and girls flying about, and there were fairies, gnomes, elves, brownies. And that night the Dream King sent dreams to these children. They all had their play games made real in their dreams. The 2 children who wanted to play they were very rich, dreamed they were rich, but oh, how they hated it. All around them were butlers and servants in wonderful liveries. And they had great motor cars which were driven by quiet, stiff persons who wouldn't answer questions. They felt as if they owned absolutely nothing at all, for everything was taken care of by someone else. They weren't allowed to play and get the least little scrap dirty, for they had to wear such wonderful clothes. Oh, it was a very miserable dream. The children who wanted to be very famous dreamed they were surrounded by people who never let them move so they could play. They saw a monument, put up in a park with their names written in stone, but the monument was too big to play with. The children with the dogs and the pony were having the most gorgeous dream. They were taking such care of their pets and the animals loved them so. But at last the Dream King left them, and they awoke suddenly. And one and all agreed that animals and games were fun, but that riches and fame were very, very dull. The hash was talking to the watermelon. "I must tell you what the lady of the house said. Well, we'll have to have some hash, I fear. I know, everyone will be furious, but still one can't waste food. And I'll have watermelon as a great treat for dessert to make up for having hash first." "Oh, dear," said the watermelon, "that was too bad. I should think you would hate me as a result." "Well, I don't," said the hash, "for I haven't a jealous disposition. I know that I've got to be made and so have the members of my family all over the country, right down through history, I believe, for things must not be wasted. But it doesn't seem as if I were so dreadful as they make me out to be. I think that if cooks bothered a little bit more about me and put in some nice seasoning people might get so they'd say, 'Oh, we're going to have hash tonight, goody, goody.' That would certainly rejoice the family of hash if such a thing ever happened. I do believe some day people will come to see your true worth," said the watermelon. "Ah, that's it," said the hash. "I have so much true worth and no charm. I wish I had a little charm, so people would relish me and enjoy me. But I do send out an entreaty to cooks to please season us and make us as nice as possible, for hash is getting tired of insults and would like to be liked just for a change." "The bird," said Daddy, "which has been chosen as the emblem of this country, the bald eagle, has very wonderful and amazing vision or eyesight, which seems so particularly splendid. And doesn't it seem fine to think that our national bird is not only so powerful and free and so much a part of the whole country, for his range is not limited to one part, but that he can see so far? For when our national bird can see so far, surely it must make us try to see far ahead too, and to see clearly and to see truly, so that we can all do our best to march on along the paths set for us that July 4, 1776, in Independence Hall, Philadelphia." Now Mr. Sun was feeling lazy, said Daddy, and besides this was his day for playing tag with the King of the Clouds and Old King Thunder. For, would you believe it? Mr. Sun is very fond of a good old-fashioned game of tag once in a while, and he began now trying to catch King Thunder. As he did so he got back of one of the clouds and it became quite dark on the earth. Here, he said, old King Thunder, come here. Those people down on the earth said they were glad you had stopped making such a noise. I wouldn't stand it if I were you. Go back and tell them what you think of them. Roar your hardest. And sure enough the thunder and rain began again, and the earth people said, we're having one of those days when one moment the sun is shining and the next it is thundering and raining. The 4th of July had passed and Jack and Evelyn were still very tired, but Daddy had a story to tell them, a really true story, and, of course, they were very eager to hear it. There was a dog once named Dash. He was an Irish setter, and he belonged to an army family. His master was a young lieutenant in the army, and his master's father was a general. Now, this dog was quite old, but he had led an active life which had agreed with him splendidly, and he didn't behave as if he were old at all. There were several young children in the family, and he was made a great pet. What he liked above everything was the sound of guns. He had been to numerous army posts, and each one seemed to him to be quite perfect, especially on the days of target practice or when the salutes were fired. But, alas, one summer the family went to live in a stupid, quiet little village, where there was absolutely no life at all. Dash seemed to be pining away in the village. Quiet country life didn't agree with this dog of the army. The family thought that maybe Dash was going to die of old age until one day came, the day of joy to so many thousands of people. And it was the day for Dash. Could it be true? He thought to himself when he first heard the sound of a huge dynamite cracker. Then came another. With a bound Dash was out of his corner, wide awake and barking furiously. There was no more sleep for that household that night, but little did they care, for all wished to enter into the celebration. Late in the day the young lieutenant said to a friend of his, let's go off to the river. I have several cannon firecrackers to send off. I didn't dare to fire them today, as I was afraid they might break the windows. But we can throw them over the bridge. Dash has gone to have his supper and is somewhat calmed down. So off they started for the river, and over the bridge they threw a lighted cannon cracker. Just before it landed in the water off it went with a terrific report. They had lighted the other and thrown it into the water when Dash went bounding into the river, swimming toward the awful firecracker. These crackers had been recommended as sure to go off, and there was the beloved Dash going for it. But the firecracker did not go off. Dash sniffed at it disgustedly, while his master breathed the biggest sigh of relief and thanks of his life. Why, what is the trouble, Mrs. Powder Pigeon? Said Mother Rabbit. Oh, sobbed Mrs. Powder Pigeon, I have fallen and hurt myself terribly. I won't be able to get out of reach of bigger animals who may want to eat me up, and I don't want to be eaten up. At that she burst into more sobs. Well, to tell you the truth, said Mother Rabbit, I don't believe there is a creature living who wants to be eaten up. But you come and live with us, and I will see that you are protected. So Mrs. Powder Pigeon went to live with Mother Rabbit. They became very friendly and attached to one another. And then when the next little bunny rabbit was born his mother said, now, I shall name him Pigeon after you, Mrs. Powder Pigeon. And Mrs. Powder Pigeon strutted about and said, you have not only saved my life by having me come and live with you, but now you are paying me a fine compliment.